Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Happy Sunday. My name is Heidi. I am part owner of a business called Aventurin Clairvoyant Intuitive Healers with my business partner, Jane Dowler. And it is almost Halloween, everyone, and we're kind of excited. Jane and I had a really neat idea to give all of you a couple of videos that lead up to Halloween about the history and the mystery of the Ouija board. So sit back and relax, and I'm going to take you 1891 February 10th, and that's when we actually are first introduced to the Ouija board. It is considered a wonderful talking board. It is a board that answers your questions about the past, the present, and the future. It was considered very harmless, very wholesome fun. It was okay if you wanted to have a seance on Saturday night, perfectly okay, and not being bothered to going to church on Sunday morning. That's how people felt about it. Now, a lot of the research that I am giving you was done by a gentleman by Robert Birch, and he's actually considered a Ouija historian. Now, he believed that the Ouija board really took off in America in the 19th century with the advent of spiritualism. Spiritualism just means that your dearly departed can make contact with the living. Spiritualism itself was really popular in Europe for several years before it hit America. But in 1848, it hit America hard when we have two psychic sisters called the Fox sisters hit the circuit. And they were considered psychic mediums. What they actually did was a lot of seances, they did a lot of table tilting, and they claimed that they would be able to talk to the dearly departed through raps on the wall and taps on the table. Now, as I said, they are your celebrity mediums back then. And it was considered clean fun. Robert Murch points out that spiritualism back then also offered a lot of people solace because back then lifespan wasn't past 50 years old. These you had women dying in childbirth, you have children passing away from a fever, and you have men going off to war that never came back. You have Mary Todd Lincoln, who is the wife of President Lincoln, and she had many seances at the White House after her 11-year-old son passed away from a fever in 1862. During the Civil War, spiritualism was really important to people because it drove families to seek comfort. Men that went off to war never came back. They needed help, they needed solace, and it was really very popular towards the second part of the 19th century. As spiritualism grew in the United States, so did the anxiety of not hearing fast enough from the dearly departed. Back then, you have to remember, we did have the telegraph, so we can talk to each other back and forth as human beings quite quickly through the telegraph. Was there a reason why the spirits couldn't do the same thing? So, here's when something else comes in. Not exactly the Ouija board, but they did have a board out there called the spirit board. And it would talk and tell you about the past, the present, and the future. It really didn't have a name, but you have an industrialist out there, a gentleman by the name of um, Charles Kennard. Now, he kind of took the ball rolling with this because with the Associated Press, they actually reported in 1886 of this phenomenon called the talking board. Nobody knows actually where that talking board came from, but the spiritualists knew about it, and they would talk through this talking board. What he did was bring in a whole bunch of his, I should say just four, of his investors. One of those investors, by the way, was the name of Elijah Bond. Mr. Bond had a sister-in-law by the name of Helen Peters. Helen Peters herself is considered a really strong medium. Now, what those investors did was they built a company and found a way to market this board. It was a called the Kennard Company. It was a Kennard novelty business, and it was supplied by these investors. One was also a colonel who was a surveyor at that time. Elijah Bond was a local lawyer, and Mr. Kennard himself just brought all these investors in, built on this idea from the Associated Press about this board, and then he decided, okay, let's make it. These gentlemen had absolutely nothing to do with spiritualism. They really truthfully didn't care about it, but they were great investors. They knew how to make money, and this is basically what they wanted to do, was to make money and open the wallets of the American public. So with that in hand, they created the Ouija board. Now, how did they name the Ouija board? Well, that's where Mr. Bond's sister-in-law, Miss Parker, comes in. They sat down at a table with this board, and they asked the board, what is your name? That actually went to Ouija. How cool is that? When they asked it what it meant, it said ominously, good luck. That's what Ouija meant. Now, with the history that was being researched at the time, and I want to probably, read that to you, and let me have it here. When they were sitting at the table, when they asked the board what their name meant, it said good luck. It's kind of eerie and cryptic. But for the fact that Peters acknowledged that she was wearing a locket bearing the name of a picture of the woman with the name Ouija right above the name. Now, that's the story that emerged from the Ouija founders' letters. And it's very possible that the woman that was in the locket is a famous author and popular women's rights activist by the name of Ouija, whom Peters admired, and that Ouija was just a misreading of that word. And you know what? We're human beings, we make a mistake. But when you look at the Ouija board and you see where D is over here and J is over there, you're wondering, how do you make that mistake? But again, we are human beings, and that's what happens. So, when we have the name of the Ouija board, now we need to patent it. Now, you can't do anything unless you patent this, and you want to make your money. You want to make sure that you do it right. Now, you have to prove that the Ouija board works. So, Elijah Bond and his sister-in-law went to Washington, and they filled out the application. Now, apparently no one knew the name of the patent clerk. So he insisted that if they could successfully spell out his name, they would get the patent. So, the gentleman, Mr. Bond, and his sister-in-law sat down at the table, question was asked, and it successfully spelled out his name. He was completely ashen-faced, completely in shock, and he said, okay, you got it. Now, whether or not Mr. Bond knew this patent officer's name, because Mr. Bond himself was a patent lawyer, again, this is the history and the mystery. And this is what helped sell the Ouija board. This is what propelled people to buy it. And that's all the company wanted. Didn't matter about anything else. The fact that people were interested in the history, they wanted the answers, it made them feel good. The gentleman that owned the business didn't care. They were selling it. And it changed hands a couple of times before it went, and if I'm not mistaken, ended up at Hasbro. Because Hasbro, I believe, now makes the Ouija board. And it's 2020, everyone, and we have a lot of history and mystery in our own rights with this pandemic that we have that's going on. So people aren't able to connect with it, and they want answers. So again, we've got the history and mystery of the Ouija board, even now in 2020, being very, very powerful and a draw for people to use. Now, again, as I said, it was considered clean fun. It was considered not bizarre, not weird, and we just have to keep in mind that this is all fun. This is all enjoyment. Now, how did we go from a fun and enjoyable, wholesome game, the Ouija board, to, as human beings that we are, considering that we are opening the portals of hell? Now, that, my friends, is another question for another video that we will be sharing with you next time. So please feel free to drop us a line on our website, on Facebook. And if you have any questions about the Ouija board, if you've had any experiences of your own on the Ouija board, we would absolutely love to hear them. Please don't be shy. Email us at info@aventurin clairvoyantintuitivehealers.com. Again, visit the website. We have information there that we can drop to you. Please don't hesitate. We are open for business, and Jane and I would absolutely love to hear from you. So enjoy the rest of the weekend. We're going to be doing part 2 of this video soon and be putting it out to you. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.